Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Hi, Rifat.
Hey. Yeah, we'll get going in a few more minutes. Just give people a chance to join. Hey, Giuseppe. Yeah, we're here. We just start.
Great, thank you.
Okay, it's I think 5 minutes past, so let's get going. Welcome everyone. So this is a reminder that not well is applicable here. If you're not familiar with this, please make sure you get familiar with this, because this governs everything that we do at the IETF, and it's important that you understand the implication of the not well. Our schedule, last week we had FedCM meeting. Today we will be talking about OAuth 2.1. And next week we have an attestation-based client authentication session. That's our agenda. Any questions, comments? If not, I will hand it to Aaron. Stop. Aaron, do you want me to share the slides and later you want to share or you want to try it from your side?
Yeah, I'll do it on my side. Hopefully this is working.
Okay, yeah, looks good.
Great. Now I just have to find my other window. There we go. Okay, thanks everybody. So just a quick reminder about why we are all here. OAuth 2.1 is a consolidation of the current mess of OAuth specs that exist. I have this diagram of showing kind of the current state of OAuth, starting with the core 6749, which defines a bunch of grant types, which have been extended, replaced, modified, etc., through various drafts over the years. So that's really the goal here, is to clean this up and make it simpler for people to understand. So before we get to the discussions, again, I just want to sort of recap. The goal here is to capture the current best practices of OAuth under a single name, so that when people refer to OAuth 2.1, they know it actually means something, and then people don't just say OAuth 2, which means a whole bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, depending on what extensions you've decided to follow. Primarily, that means consolidating 6749, 6750, the security BCP, the native apps and browser apps best current practices, and we actually recently added the ISS response parameter reference, since that became an RFC as well. Importantly, the goal here is to not define new behavior. There shouldn't be any new mechanisms defined in 2.1, just consolidating existing RFCs. So there's still quite a lot to cover here. So I've been going through the GitHub issues to grab items for discussion. I've selected a few highlights here that I feel like would be useful to get feedback on. There's a lot more issues than what we'll cover today, so feel free to jump in on any of the threads anyway on GitHub if you're curious. And this is the link. So unless there's any questions, we're just going to jump right in to the issues. Okay. Don't see anybody popping up on the queue. So this is a fun one. Hopefully not a big deal. The example of the bearer scheme in the authorization header uses a capital B, and in the ABNF definition, it also uses a capital B. This has caused confusions in the past because technically this string is case insensitive. If you look at the ABNF spec, it actually says this is ABNF strings are case insensitive. So you can use any capitalization you want and it means the same thing. That B does not have to be capital according to this document. So the question is, since this has caused confusion with readers, arguing both sides of this version, what should we do here? Should we just add a sentence to the spec clarifying that it's case insensitive so that people don't have to go and track down the ABNF spec, which is admittedly a bit hard to find from this document? Should we update the example or the definition to use just a lowercase string? Justin.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were doing discussion now or if these are just things that you're...
No, I just want to go through each issue and discuss it as we go, because
you're coming soft, Justin.
You're very quiet.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's doing this again. It picked the wrong device. Anyway, Brian may joke in the chat, but I think that having the main example be lowercase makes sense, but we should have several aberrant versions of this in other examples through the document, so that somebody who assumes it's always lowercase will at least have a chance to notice that something is squirrely.
That is a solution.
Joseph?
Thanks. Yeah. So this was my issue. I mean, I'm strongly in favour of putting the explicit sentence in saying that it's case insensitive. I don't think anything else will fully avoid the pain. Don't mind too much what happens with the examples.
Dick?
I've come across quite a few implementations that are case sensitive. So if we do change this, we're potentially going to break some things.
I would argue that those are incorrect implementations, because there's nothing about adding a sentence that says it's case insensitive that's changing any of the existing definition. If someone has made a case sensitive implementation, that's on them.
I'm just saying we're going to, yes, they may not be spec compliant, but it's been out for a long time and people have got lots of code that just has it done just like the example where it's a capital B bearer.
That's fair. I don't think that, like Justin said in chat, that's not us breaking things. It's telling people it's already broken. It's
Are you still talking?
No, sorry, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, obviously client sending anything will work, but I've come across large servers that, you know, are not happy if you don't have case sensitive bearer.
I'm not surprised. I think that's maybe a good argument for keeping the examples with the capital B, but adding the sentence saying it's case insensitive.
Would there be a problem if we were to say it was case sensitive?
Yes, because that is not, that requires a different ABNF. You actually have to use the percent encoded value for the B in that case.
Yeah, and that would probably actually break things, which is kind of the opposite of our aim here. I mean, I think things that are case sensitive are generally breaking in the real world already. We've seen plenty of examples of that. So yeah, I don't think changing this to be case sensitive, that will be breaking things in a new and different way. And it's not in the spirit of OAuth 2.1.
I bet you that everybody uses the string capital B bearer everywhere.
I have enough evidence to show that that does not happen.
You have examples of that, like of libraries that don't?
Yeah, there's plenty in the Conformance Suite bug tracker. I think it would take me a while to dig them out, but yeah, this has been I actually read this text wrong at one point, and the Conformance Suite was wrong. People, as a result of people arguing based on misinterpreting this text. Right. Yeah, it's messy, but yeah, I've seen servers that send you back a lowercase bearer from the token endpoint, but the resource server expects an uppercase bearer.
Yeah, well, this particular example is the resource server. And you're saying the resource server wanted it all uppercase?
Just the B uppercase.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. I think a lot of it, not so much the AS, but the RS, you know, it's coded in like that. I don't know. I worry about changing the example. I think adding a sentence saying it's case insensitive. If you're saying
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with keeping the examples with the capital B and the ABNF definition with the capital B, but adding the sentence saying it's case insensitive.
Yeah. Anybody has a problem with that? Like, is that reasonable?
For the minutes, can you repeat that, Aaron?
Keep the examples with the capital B, so no change to the examples. Add a sentence explicitly stating that it is case insensitive.
Steve.
So then the conformance suite would be for 2.1 would then be adapted to test both cases in capital B and small b. Would that be the intent?
There is no conformance test suite for 2.1, but Joseph maintains the conformance suite for OpenID Connect, so that could be a question for him.
Okay.
Yes, so I think we are testing both cases in the conformance suite now, I believe.
Currently?
Yep, as of maybe a year or two ago. I can't remember exactly when we added it.
Okay, that's great.
Are we good here? Like, anybody has any problem with this kind of recommendations? Okay,
Great.
I think looks good. Keep going.
Next. Oh boy. This one was opened by Philip, I believe. This is a tricky one let me try to recap the state of this discussion. We discussed it at the last IETF, however, it wasn't resolved. The problem is that when sending client ID and client secret in the HTTP authorization header, OAuth defines that you have to first form encode the client ID and client secret values before passing them into the HTTP transformation of this base64 encoding that adds the colon in the middle. And that process has led to many quirks in many implementations that are broken in different ways. Some encode, some don't encode, some over encode, some encode only certain subsets of the characters. But I would also like to point out this is not a problem for credentials sent in the post body. So when it's actually sent as a client ID and client secret parameter along with other parameters in the request. And it is also not a problem if the client ID and secret have only alphanumeric characters. So it's only a problem when the client ID and secret have punctuation and special characters that would need to get encoded. And that's what's led to problems. So the share this tab instead. That's what I wanted to do. Here's the issue on GitHub. There's been a chunk of discussion here. I don't know what is a good way to resolve this. I guess the argument of no change is that it doesn't fix anything, and people are still going to have a mess of implementations with mixed interoperability. But I guess, yeah, so that's kind of the current state. I don't know, can I put you on the spot, Philip, to add your thoughts here?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I joined mid Aaron's presentation. I'm a bit on an unusual spot. There's a lot of noise around me. I don't entirely recover or recall the state of the discussion, but the one thing that I recall is that if we can't fix in any way or prevent any future interoperability problems with regards to this, that at least we remove the language that says that using client secret and client ID in the body is not recommended, because then it would allow client software to use that, it's called client secret post method by default, which as far as I know is far more interoperable with the big IDPs than client secret basic is.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess just to summarize that, the original, I believe you opened the original issue because I actually had removed this section of the spec. It is back now, and I just so that we didn't lose it entirely, it's back and it links out to the GitHub discussion. But what I think what you just said was in this section 241 where it talks about this algorithm and gives the example, and it's that right now it says in addition the AS may support these parameters in the post body, but it's not recommended. So one resolution here is we don't change anything about the algorithm, the encoding algorithm, and just leave it kind of the mess that it is, but remove the text that says this is not recommended, because then people would have at least a clearer path to avoiding the issues entirely.
What was the reason for stating this as not recommended in the first place?
That is an excellent question. I don't know the answer.
No, I wasn't able to find it, and I looked really hard in the history of the OAuth spec and the mailing list. The one thing that I'm not sure about is, as far as I remember, OAuth 2 does not require the AS to support this method, and I think OIDC does. So again, I'm bringing up something which I think would be a solution, knowing that there is already something which somebody's going to say this is not compatible with OAuth 2 in the first place because we didn't require this in the first place. I think we should make it required to support. But again, I know I'm gonna fight with people on this, so it's okay if we don't. First and foremost, removing the not recommended portion. If we could manage to do that, that would be a huge win.
Okay, Justin.
Great.
Yeah, as I recall the discussions, the making the form parameters not recommended was largely based on feedback from the wider IESG community, in that we have a mechanism in HTTP that already does this, just tell people to use that. And there was some pressure, I don't remember exactly the details, but there was some pressure to lean on the HTTP method of sending machine authentication, which would be the authorization header.
That makes sense.
I see.
Just to give a counterexample, there are now other client authentication methods that only work in the post body in OAuth. So maybe that is no longer a relevant argument. Just
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will still get the HTTP directorate mad, but
Yeah.
okay.
that's something that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Another thing that we need to be aware of is that that's going to be a change compared to 2.0, which we said we're not going to change anything. But anyway, we'll keep that in mind. Joseph.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, we're going to make the HTTP people mad, but I don't see a better way out of this mess. And yeah, I mean, it is technically a change, but it's a recommendation change rather than a must. It seems like it might be a reasonable thing to do. And I think just to kind of repeat what I said on the ticket, I think Aaron had suggested that we add a bit more text, making it clear that there's some oddities here. And Philip had suggested that we add examples that include this weird case, and those seem like good things to do as well to me.
Okay, thanks, Joseph.
Thanks.
Brian. Brian, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I don't know how to use this thing. I think what Justin said very likely is how things went down, but at the same time, I don't think those involved with that pushback realized like kind of the gross misuse of basic authentication that was being done with the URL encoding underneath the encoded content. So perhaps if the same thing comes up, either text in here that explains like kind of the problems with what was being done and why allowing for this other method is not as much of an abomination as they might think it is on a cursory read might be helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Brian. Steve.
Just my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but one of the ways that Post helped with the length limitations of some of the tokens, as I recall, when URL encoding or bearer token encoding. Anyway, that might be a reason not to, or to not disrecommend, if you can excuse the double negative.
Brian, are you in?
Negative is excused.
Brian, are you gonna reply to that or?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's true, but not at all relevant to the particular question in hand.
Hannes, you have a comment in the chat there. Do you want to state it here, maybe?
Yeah, I think we should foremost make a decision about what makes sense to us rather than second guessing on whether we would update the HTTP review group or whatever. I think if they get upset, then we'll see. But I think if we think that's the right decision to make, then we should make that. Whatever the reason was, like many years ago, things change, and so we may be on a different ground here now.
Yeah.
Great. So along those lines, I guess my next question would be, is it sufficient to just remove this paragraph about the not recommended? Basically, this would go away. That does, however, still leave it as an optional thing for the authorization server to implement. So we could continue, we could keep it the same and just leave it optional. That way it's really not changing any behavior. Or are people saying that we should actually change this to be something else, like a should, or I don't know.
Brian, are you still in the queue or is that lingering from previous one? Okay, Philip.
Yeah, of course, I would be immensely grateful if you made it required, but I know that's not necessary with everybody. What I can say from observing the different software that is out there, a lot of the existing software already defaults to client secret post without breaking a sweat with the known IDPs out there. I know the biggest browser extension for making HTTP and auth connections is called Postman. Also only supports client secret post and it works with all the IDPs. Or at least most of them, I think so. Again, I didn't notice any friction there when an IDP. Sorry, losing my track. Yeah, a lot of people. And I think it would be okay if we made it required to implement. But if we don't, as a client implementer, I will still default my client to it because I know it's going to be interoperable, regardless of us making it required by the spec or not. Knowing that it will fix more people than having the old default. It's not going to work with everything. And knowing that the users of my client software can switch to client secret basic to fix the occasional IDP that doesn't support client secret post. So I'm done.
Thanks, Philip. So maybe let's see if we can summarize this. So would removing that paragraph that talks about not recommended, the whole paragraph, would that be sufficient? I think that's probably what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly this one.
So I think we're all on the same page. We're going to remove this paragraph. That seems to be agreed here.
Okay.
So the next question is it sufficient to just remove it and leave it that this is an optional feature that in the spec? Or as Philip was saying, should we actually go stronger and say that the authorization server should or must support the client secret post? I would say if it supports client secrets at all, which is not a guarantee. Now other better ones, but or do we not even, or do we just leave it alone? And the current world is that most authorization servers do support that, and most clients default to it. So,
I think in the spirit of not changing 2.0, I just leave that sentence as is and just remove that paragraph. But see, Joseph,
I do want to clarify the not changing things. The idea is to not define new mechanisms, not changing things entirely. So there are several changes in 2.1 based on things, but that statement is more about we're not making things up in 2.1.
Okay. Yeah.
And Joseph, I see your comment about the last sentence. I hadn't read that far, honestly, but yes, I agree. This sentence is useful, so we'll keep that.
Cool, thank you.
It'll also make it easier to see because it won't be the last sentence in the paragraph. Okay, so the screen share is not working for people, but I don't know why. Some people.
Yeah. Some people, yeah.
Some people, it works for me.
Yeah.
Well, let me drop a link to the section in the chat in any case.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is like, okay, we agreed that removing that section or most of that section.
Yep.
Anybody has an opinion on changing the may to something else? I see Mike in the queue.
Which paragraph in the client secret are you talking about?
So there's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 7th paragraph, the part that has the not recommended. That's the one we're taking out. But then there's this up above that. There's the sentence that says the authorization server may support client credentials in the post body. So the second part of the question is, do we continue to leave it as an may? The AS may support client credentials in the post body, or do we change it to be a stronger statement?
Aaron, I think Joseph has a point. Maybe
Joseph does have a theory. Let me try sharing again.
Unshare again, see if that helps.
I think you have to approve me again now.
Okay. Yep.
That sounds like a good meat echo bug.
I can see now.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Good. That's a bug there. Okay, Mike, any thoughts on this? What did you have a chance to read it?
So we're talking about deleting all of it before the parameters can only be transmitted in the request content.
Yeah, that's one part of it. Yeah. And the second part is the sentence just before those parameters with the may. Should that be changed?
Sorry, I had to join late. I'm not sure what we're trying to achieve.
The problem is that this encoding of the special first URL encode the secret and then HTTP basic encode it is problematic and has led to many interop problems. So we're basically trying to get better interop by addressing that issue. And one of the problems is that this language says you shouldn't do anything but HTTP basic, which is the problematic one. So can we do better by encouraging people to do the form post version.
Okay,
I
Dick.
I would like
Go ahead.
would like
Go ahead,
to
Mike.
know. I'd like to know, probably from Joseph, where the OpenID certification tests on this are. Do we have a test for using the form post? And do people pass it? And is it required?
Oh, that's several questions, and you didn't go where I expected, because the actual behavior that's under discussion here we can't really test because it requires a client secret with an unexpected character in it, which obviously is the client secret is server generated, we can't really achieve.
Mike is asking about post, not secret.
Yes,
So
I know,
not post.
but I was answering the one I can answer. I can probably get an answer to the other question if you just give me 30 seconds.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is, do we have evidence that implementers have built the form post, or are they all mostly trying to use authorization basic?
So what Philip said earlier was that he has encountered more instances of the form post from clients and servers than not.
Yeah,
Is that correct summary?
There's a little bit of history there. First of all, the client software that I'm encountering defaults mostly to client secret post. The fact that my software started defaulting to client secret basic all stems from OpenID client registration, which uses that as the default, and I'm using that metadata structure as my default. The other side of the coin is that when there are authorization servers that pre-register the client with set secret as a default, they have issues with a lot of software, and that's why a lot of authorization treat basic and secret post as equal to one another. So whatever client gets used, they can use either one of them, and it's still gonna pass. And I think in the certification side of things, there is a OIDC server, client secret post test. I'm not sure how required it is to support it, but at least the description of it doesn't say that it's optional or anything.
Yeah, so I just checked that. Thanks, Philippe. So yeah, the conformance suite for the basic OpenID Connect profile tests both client secret basic and post, and requires them both to work.
Okay, good. In that case, I have no objections to the proposed text changes.
Okay, Dick.
Well, a quick look seems to say that client basic and client post are part of the metadata saying what you support. Client secret post and client secret basic and client secret JWT. So I don't know that we need to necessarily change anything. I mean, one, I'm in agreement taking out the one paragraph, but I don't know that we should say that an authorization server should support it, right? They just may support it. And in the metadata, it would be saying whether they support it or not.
Can I have a quick comment? In the past, we've seen software that tried to configure its method based on what's in the metadata, particularly troublesome with regards to exactly client authentication, because, for instance, there were authorization servers who in that array had none as the first one, and that software was poorly written, and it just chose the first one to authenticate, and that's what it used. So deciding on the metadata, which one of the available ones you're going to use, it's problematic. But if you're going to use that metadata to decide which one of the two you're going to use as your default, that's probably okay.
Now that was more where I was going with it, was that you know whether it's, I mean, you may not even support client secret basic, right?
So
Right, yeah.
let me jump in here, because there's no requirement that a server supports client secret at all. Like this section is saying if there is a client secret, so it's in for clients that were issued a client secret. So ignore the case of clients with no client secret, because that doesn't apply to this discussion. However, this sentence does say that the basic authentication scheme is required. And then it says that the post body version is optional. So that's what we're talking about here. The flip side of
just a second, Aaron. Up at the top of that, it says that if it has a secret, that it may use HTTP basic auth there too.
Yeah, that's actually kind of confusing.
Yeah, so it's like I may use basic auth and I may use post.
So the client may use basic auth, the server must support basic auth, and the server may support post body. So the flip side of the question is, do we want to change this must so that the authorization server doesn't have to support the problematic one?
We're pivoting. Interesting.
Well, from a interrupt point of view, right? The client should be able to pick either thing, and the server should be able to should support a broader list of things than the client must support. So if we're saying the client may use it, then it seems like the server should support it. What are we trying to fix?
We're trying to fix the problem. This is a problem, and instead of trying to actually fix the encoding, which is a much deeper change, we're trying to avoid people falling into the trap of using the encoding that causes problems. So trying to avoid the trap means encourage people, or at least allow people to use the version that doesn't have the encoding problems, which is client secret post.
Sure, but we solve that by taking out the not recommended, that we're not trying to steer people away from it.
Yeah, but it still leaves it as an authorization server has to support the problematic one.
And only may support the other one.
Yeah. So, I mean, one option is we flip it. We say the authorization server must support post body and may support basic auth. I mean, I honestly don't see that as a problem, because I think it actually probably reflects implementations today anyway. And given what we just heard about the support client secret post, that seems to be the case.
Okay, let's hear from the queue here. Hannes.
Let's try to keep this one quick, because I have a few more issues that I want to get to as well.
Yeah. In general, as a policy, like if we could avoid interoperability problems, if we could reduce the number of options for a version like 2.1, these changes would all seem to be very desirable to me as an overall approach. So in that case, like I would change the MTI to implement to something like must implement this the form post, and thereby sidestepping the problem altogether. But that's
I think interop is definitely in the spirit of the goal of doing this update in the first place. So I'm supportive of that.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I've got a suggestion that you write a note saying what the interop problem has been with client secret basic, and encourage implementers to do it right so as to avoid it. This is orthogonal to everything else we've talked about with this,
Yeah.
but I think giving people the history of how this has failed would be useful.
I agree. No problem there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so am I hearing that we changed the mandatory to implement and essentially rearrange this so that the authorization server must support client credentials in the post body, and then change this to a may, remove this, and add a paragraph describing the interop problems? Okay, I guess
So
not hearing it. Any objections?
I see +1 to Mike is like plus
Yeah, that
Mike
was about adding
plus
the
9.
paragraph describing the context.
Right. Like but is that +1 includes changes like from a must to and all those changes, other changes, or is this? I'm not clear.
I didn't really quite follow what you were proposing there, Aaron.
So the latest proposal is change the post body to a must, change basic auth to a may here, and on top of the other ones that we agreed to earlier, which is removing the not recommended text and adding Mike's suggestion of describing the interop problems with basic.
Okay, well, my understanding is we want to steer people to start using the post instead of the basic, correct? Yep. So potentially we put the post up at the top instead of the basic.
Yep.
But I'm a little hesitant to take out the must for basic. But part of me thinks like maybe 2.1. I mean, there's a number of other things we've dropped or changed based on best practice. And so if we think best practice is to do the post, right? Let's emphasize the post, and then we could say the may, and then have some text describing why it's a may and why it's problematic. Which was what I think Mike was suggesting.
Yeah, I think that is what I said as well, right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. That's why I was echoing it back.
Okay, great. Yeah.
But I thought you suggested changes like you're talking about really change the authorization must to something else, which I don't think that was. But is
so. Yeah. So the authorization server must support client credentials in the post body. The authorization server may support basic auth. And then we're
flipping the recommendations right now, right? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
And okay,
and that's based on the data that this is the basic auth has been the problem, and it's better practice to do the post body for interop reasons and for the to avoid the encoding issues.
I just want to make sure that the team, the work group here is comfortable with that and understand what we're proposing here, right? So they agreed to remove that sentence. I think nobody is complaining about that. Now flipping those recommendations, anybody has a problem with this? So people are comfortable with doing this? No issues? Okay.
Great.
Let's go for it. Next.
Okay, next, let me go back to this slide. Can you see the new slide?
Yeah.
My screen is still working? Great, okay.
Just a reminder, we have 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes to go, okay?
Yep, so we'll try to keep this discussion quick. This issue 163 is an interesting one. Essentially, the suggested proposal here is to add a sentence about to say that the authorization server should not define conflicting definitions of OpenID scopes. So OAuth doesn't define any values of scopes. It just leaves it as a blank slate. OpenID Connect has defined several scopes, including profile claims. And it is entirely possible that an OAuth server has also defined its own profile claim outside of OpenID for whatever reason. It can happen. That's not a problem. The problem is if the OAuth server has defined a claim that means something different from the OpenID version of that claim. That's where we can lead to issues. So the proposal is basically, can we add this sentence? I think, Brian's saying scopes are not claims. I think that is not relevant to the discussion. Swap claim with scope because these are OpenID scopes. The authorization should not define different meaning of scopes that are defined in OpenID.
Brian is in the queue here. Go ahead.
It's not relevant other than it's terribly distracting, and we got to stop calling things that aren't claims. But that's a larger crusade I'm on.
Okay.
This seems legit, but OpenID Connect is not the only one that has its own scope values. So the I don't know. The problem is bigger than this,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. So if you were to add a note, it should probably be a little bit more generic, and I don't know how to do that, but
that makes sense. Yeah, I don't see a good way to do that because
I don't either. No, Joseph.
Oh, come on.
You want to be the designated expert?
I don't do that kind of thing.
I don't know. Maybe you could add something that is very much along these lines and specifically discusses OpenID Connect, but has a mention that it's not the only protocol that might use scopes as a switch for a certain behavior or for its own context, and just leave it somewhat open while pointing out the specifics.
Yeah, the problem is that this is specifically about servers that don't implement OpenID Connect. So trying to genericize this is actually impossible because it means don't define scopes that are defined anywhere of things you don't implement. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a path to this is instead of adding this recommendation of should not, just mention that there are scopes defined in OpenID Connect that are commonly used with OAuth.
Seems legit.
Okay.
And say it's recommended to not have conflicting scope definitions with them. But, recommended, not must. Sorry.
Go ahead, Justin.
Right. I actually think that the approach that Aaron just landed on is good. Mention that the scopes exist because OpenID Connect is one particularly widely spread application that's built on top of OAuth. And I think it's even okay to list those scopes as examples, but we 100% should not be normative about this. Because for nothing else, there are a bunch of other identity protocols that are not OpenID Connect that a whole bunch of big service providers run out there that use the exact same claim names. Scope names, Brian. They use the exact same scope names with similar semantics to OpenID Connect, but they are not OpenID Connect. And so we would be saying that all of those are non-compliant with OAuth because of a spec that is outside of the IETF's purview. And I think that that is A, not something that we want to do, and B, not something that I think would pass IETF muster anyway, or IESG muster.
Okay, so to recap, we'll mention that there are scopes defined in OpenID. Recommend not conflicting with those scopes, but just as a recommended.
A lowercase recommended, if anything.
Okay. So not normative language.
Correct.
Just calling out. Okay, I'm okay with that. Great.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I don't know. I can't see the queue. Am I in the front?
Yeah, now you are. Go ahead.
Okay. The only other historical or background statement I'll make is that in the security BCP, which I did a complete review of recently, Connect does have some special status with OAuth in that we're calling out Connect features, especially nonce, in the security BCP, which is just a reflection of how closely historically tied they have become. I'm not changing what I'm suggesting Aaron do, just context.
Okay. I think that's it on that one. We have 2 minutes left. Let's see if we can knock one more of the two issues out. This one or this one? I would rather deal with this one. There's language right now in the native app section that says claimed HTTPS redirects may be accepted as identity proof of a client. However, it's in the context of impersonation of native apps. And I think reading this can mislead people to think that the identity proof can be used for other things, as in other, like essentially client authentication, which might have other implications. So can we agree that we can revise this section to make it very explicit that this claimed HTTPS scheme is only acceptable for essentially skipping the consent screen of a native app?
Yeah, I think we probably need more time to think about and discuss this rather than 1 minute. I fear, Aaron.
Agree.
Okay.
We may need that a little, maybe another interim meeting to finish off those issues.
How many more open issues do you have, Aaron?
In total, there's a lot. I wanted to. Some of them are sort of less get group consensus and more just do a work. But there's. I can definitely put together another list of ones to discuss, because there's still a lot.
I guess my question is, do we need another interim, or can this wait for Vancouver?
We could use time in Vancouver if people are up for that. But I'd be happy to do another round of this before then as well.
Okay. You and I, let's discuss this offline and see if there is a warrant, like if this warrants another interim, okay?
But it was a good discussion. So thanks, Amy, for preparing this and selecting the issues, the ones that we can drive home.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.